Hey, it's Anthony Allen Ramos from GLAAD. How are you? Billy, congrats on the film. It's so great, so much fun.
Thank
But
you.
I gotta know, thinking about this process and the road to this, what would it have been to you, for you as a little Billy, a teenage Billy, to have been able to see a film like Bros?
I think it would have been life-changing and really eye-opening because I grew up, as anyone familiar with my work knows, I was a pop culture obsessive since I was a child. I loved entertainment. My parents also loved it. We went to the movies every single week, every Saturday night as a kid. And I remember specifically loving romantic comedies, and we went to see them all. And I grew up, as now an old man that I'm becoming, I grew up in the 80s and 90s when we got great romantic comedies released fairly regularly in movie theaters, which is something that doesn't happen anymore. When Harry Met Sally and Moonstruck and Working Girl and Tootsie, all those movies I loved and rewatched a million times over the years, but never saw myself in them, really. You feel for the characters, you laugh, you can relate to it, but you're not quite the Tom Hanks and you're not quite the Meg Ryan, and I think it would have been so comforting and inspiring to see that as a child, and I'm really glad that we do have this wave of queer films and shows now that young people get exposed to at a much younger age than we did.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I grew up in the suburbs, and the multiplex was the only place to see movies. If you wanted to rent something a little outside the norm, you would go to Jumbo Video, and at the back of Jumbo Video, there was a little curtain, and you could go find the indie sort of queer films, but you just felt sort of bad doing that, The
Yeah.
fact that this is in the multiplex says
Like it was shameful.
like it was shameful.
Yeah.
Oh, I have those Blockbuster video memories too. But Billy, let me go to you. The film is hilarious, so much fun. But I do think there's a moment of takeaway for people that see it. What do you hope that anyone, whether they're gay, straight, that see Bros, what do you hope that they leave that theater thinking?
Well, it hasn't been often that in quote-unquote mainstream major studio films, the LGBTQ characters got to be multi-dimensional. We were often there, if we were ever there, which is rare. We were the best friend, we were the sidekick, we were helping the female lead find love and counseling her, and we barely were two-dimensional, And what I really wanted to do with these characters, with both Aaron, Luke's character, and mine, is to say, yes, we can be funny and charming and sweet and all the things that gay men have often been required to be in mainstream Hollywood content, but we're also complicated, right? And we're messy and we're hypocritical, and I wanted to be able to show both of these characters as multidimensional, which is something that gay characters in movies rarely get to be. Beyond that, also, you don't sit down to write a historic movie, you don't sit down to write a gay movie, you sit down to write a hilarious movie. And getting to collaborate with Judd Apatow and Nick Stoller, who've made some of the funniest movies of the last 20 years, Bridesmaids and 40-Year-Old Virgin and Trainwreck and Forgetting Sarah Marshall. I wanted a movie like that, but that happens to be about gay people and LGBTQ characters we've never gotten. And so the main takeaway is I want people to leave and say, wow, I forgot how much fun it is to laugh in a movie theater with hundreds of other people. We just don't get that experience enough anymore, and it's one of my favorite things to do.
Nick, how are you? Congratulations on this.
Thank you.
I gotta know a little bit, as getting to work so closely with Billy Eichner, was it as fun and crazy as we imagined? Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, he's a comic genius. He's so funny. And every day on set, he would be thinking of new stuff and new jokes and riffing stuff. And then he also is very focused on the script too, and making sure that he's delivering the joke in the exact kind of intonation that he imagined it being delivered. And so it's a combination of this looseness and a focus on the intricacies of the dialogue that I thought was really interesting and cool as the person behind the camera.
Why was it so important for you to be a filmmaker and an ally and say, you know what, it's about time. We've never had a gay rom-com. I want to be a part of bringing it to the masses.
Yeah, before I met Billy, for years I'd been intrigued by the idea of telling this kind of story, but I'm straight. It was not my story to tell. And when I met Billy, he was in the show Friends from College that I created with my wife, and he was really incredible in it. He was an excellent, it turned out he was an incredible actor, which I didn't know. And then we screened the first episode of that in a movie theater, and every time he was on screen, he killed. And I was like, oh, he's a movie star. And so I approached him about making this movie. And I think that, it's a good thing to do. But more than that, when you're telling a fresh story, people laugh. They want to see, the best comedies are always fresh stories, I actually, on the set, we had an entirely LGBTQ cast, and they would come up, they would be like, this is so amazing. They wouldn't, and this is such an amazing experience. And my reaction was, it's crazy it took this long. Like, I don't feel like, I'm proud I helped make this happen, but I'm not like happy this is the first one. Like, this should have happened like a long time ago. So that's my feeling about it,
Yeah, we're so happy. And look, the film is hilarious. People are gonna love it. But it also, I think it has takeaway, it has heart. What do you want audiences, whether they're gay, straight, what do you want them to see Bros and go home and say, you know what, like?
I think my hope is that people laugh really hard, that they maybe cry a little bit, and that they have a great time at the movies. I mean, we haven't had this kind of comedy in a long time just because of the pandemic and this and that. So I hope it's, this kind of movie it's a bit like a party, and I hope and then I also think, and it's a little cheesy to say, but I like romantic comedies and I like romance, that people feel like, oh, this is a relatable love story. This is not, sure, it's two gay men, but this is a universal relatable love story, the way the best rom-coms are.
Yeah, and the film drops on the 30th of September, leading right into LGBTQ History Month. And this has a lot of history into it. Tell me about, kind of getting to, I assume that was Billy's idea, but tell me about that process, because people will learn a lot and also be very entertained.
Yeah, he came in, he was like, I think he should be a podcast guy, and I think he should be on the board of this LGBTQ museum. And I was like, that's such a funny idea. And then it was important to both of us to thread real historical characters into the movies. And it was a thematic thing too, of just not knowing your story and not knowing how, not seeing your love stories reflected in history and in movies and in stories. And so that was a big part of the subtext of the film. And I always want to say at the beginning, I almost want to put like something at the beginning that like, everything in this movie is true. Like, because I think audiences, I realize when watching it, might think that we're making it up, but everything, all the historical stuff that's mentioned is true. And we had a lot more of it actually too, but because of the running time and stuff, we had to cut it down. But yeah, that element of it. I also am happy about it because we're talking about like putting aside the LGBTQ part of it. We're just talking about history in a studio comedy. I mean, that's crazy.
Yeah, well, Nick, thanks so much for the time. Just putting it out there. Bros, the sequel, Bros 2, maybe, we'll see. But just remind everyone, Bros comes out September 30th in theaters.